Ni sa ma ga. So what you don't have to do is ni sa ga. And what you do have to do is ni sa ma ga. Now this slide from ma to ga. Ma ga. This is Meend. Namaste. I'm Rishabh, and in this episode we will be discussing something different. We will be discussing a concept, much like Chandan Laikari from the previous episodes. In this episode, we will be discussing the concept of Meend. Now, before we begin with the concept of Meend, I've come to notice the fact that most of you who are watching the videos are not subscribing. You're just watching the video and going on to the next video. So I would highly recommend you to subscribe. It helps spread my message of Indian classical music, of spreading Indian classical music amongst the masses in my country as well as the world. And you have good quality content coming into your YouTube timeline. Anyway, jokes apart, let's get to the topic of Meend. Now, Meend is the term for this thing. In Indian classical music and in Western classical music, it's called a glissando or a slide. Now, what is a Meend? It's actually a very, very simple thing. But what is more important is why is it used and maybe where is it used. First of all, the bare minimum definition for you to become a good listener. What is a Meend? A Meend is a slide, as I just said. A slide between what? A slide between two different notes. What does that mean? Suppose we have four notes. So if our sa is our tonic. So sa, suppose we define four notes. Sa, re, ga, ma. Now imagine in some scenario I have to come back from ma to re. Ma, ga, re or ma, re. Now either I could sing the two notes staccato, as in ma, re, two different separate solid entities, or I could slide between ma and re. Ma, re. I slid from ma to re and I touched the ga in between. So I slide from one note to another note. And what is the slide composed of? The notes that I want to use in between. So in this case, I slid from ma, re and I touched the ga. Ma, re. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. That's it. That is all that you need to know. And now, as I promised, this is that one channel that you need to watch in order to at least begin understanding Indian classical music and not necessarily perform it. So what is the thought process behind the Meend? It's not just random sliding between notes. According to me, there are two things. One, it sounds beautiful. It's a form of ornamentation. Much like you apply makeup and wear good shoes and whatnot, a Meend is a form of ornamentation to beautify whatever it is that you're singing. It does not matter if it's classical music or not, Indian classical, Western classical, non-classical, this and that, folk music, doesn't matter. Wherever it is that you'll use Meend properly, aesthetically, it will sound great. It'll take your performance and your listening ability, if you're listening, to a different level. The second point, according to me, is sometimes Meend is used to identify a Raag. Now, what do I mean by that? First of all, what is a Raag? What is the function of a Raag? When is a Raag sung? What is that Raag? What is this Raag? We don't need to know about all of that stuff right now. We'll go into all of that later. That's okay. That's chill. But what we need to know right now is somewhat of a connection between Meend and a Raag. A Raag has rules. So sometimes you cannot approach a particular note in a Raag in a particular way. What does that mean? Let's take the example of a wonderful Raag called Multani. Now what does Multani have? Sa, if that's our sa. Sa, ni sa ma ga, ma ga. So you saw how I jumped from sa to ma before coming to ga. Ni sa ma ga. The rules of Multani, the rules of Raag Multani state that you cannot go from sa to ga directly. Who has made these rules? I have no idea. Probably the person who made the Raag. And what a wonderful Raag. For example, you cannot go ni sa ga. You can't do that. You have to touch the tivra ma. So instead of ma, you sing ma. So ni sa ma ga. So what you don't have to do is ni sa ga. And what you do have to do is ni sa ma ga. Now this slide from ma to ga. Ma ga. This is Meend. And this is used to identify Multani as a Raag. Ni sa ma ga ma pa. Re, 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 re. Nanan me an ban kaun si pari. Re, nanan me an ban ma ga. This is used to identify the Raag. This is the identity of Multani. Take another example. Take the example of Bhairav, for example. Bhairav has a komal re or a flat second. Sa re ga ma. I sang 4 notes. Sa re ga ma. Now suppose I have to come from ma to re in Bhairav. Sa re ga ma re. I can't do that. Also, it sounds ugly. I can't just go like that from ma to re. Sa re ga ma re. Sounds bad. Sa re ga ma re. Ga ma re. I slide from ma to re. And this gives a separate dimension, a separate sort of a somber, meditative quality to the rag. Ga ma re. And also, it's a part of the identity of the rag. Also, the re in Bhairav is not re. It's a shaking re. Ga ma re. It's called Andolan. We don't have to deal with that right now. But you see how the Meend was used to identify the rag. It's great to use. It's used to beautify or add ornamentation to the rag itself, but it's used to identify the rag sometimes. And that is the beauty of the Meend. So that was it for this short episode, and I hope you liked it. And in the next episode, we will try and apply the concept of Meend in an actual concert by a great maestro. You don't have to hear me singing. We'll hear someone else singing or playing an instrument. So I will see you in the next episode. Until then, namaste.